Welcome to Rochester Voices. Really happy to have you join us today, and I'm pleased to be able to say that as your mayor, I have had the pleasure of working with today's guest, Rene Halasy.
Right, for a long time.
For a very long time. We were just talking about that. 19 years as RNeighbors director, which is amazing, and we've known each other for many years before that. But we've invited you here today to talk a little bit about the RNeighbors program. So I'm hoping you can explain to the viewers what RNeighbors is, and then we can talk a little bit about what if they want something like you have to offer in their neighborhood.
Awesome. RNeighbors has been around since 2001. And it was originally started by Mayor Canfield. And he wanted some sort of resource that he could give to neighborhoods to help them if they wanted to add a stop sign or if they wanted to change something in their neighborhoods. And there was no avenue to do that. So he formed a task force, and they decided to create a nonprofit that was funded by the city and outside of the city, but a partner. And that's how RNeighbors got started back in 2001. We're a nonprofit. And we work closely with the city, your office quite a bit, and our goals are really to make connections in neighborhoods. And I just read a statistic recently that 60 to 70% of Americans throughout their lifetime will feel disconnected and not supported by their community at some point in their life. And having those neighborhood connections makes such a difference.
Absolutely, and RNeighbors has been that connector for folks. And when I became mayor, you and I chatted and we talked about really seeing that RNeighbors is under the umbrella of the city, even though you're a nonprofit. But one of the ways we could help support RNeighbors was to bring them in and have office space. And you are over at it's called the DSIC building. Some people know it as where the North Police Station is. But you have an office over there. Mm-hmm. You're kind of a small staff, but
yes,
you do
I'm a staff of 1.5.
Staff of 1.5, but you do mighty things in the community. And I thought maybe you could share with us a couple of your premier programs. And one of them I know about is your tree planting, but you've done many others, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, our tree planting that you were good enough to be at last spring when we planted our 8,000th boulevard tree.
Wow.
And we've had more volunteers than 8,000 help over the years. And we do a spring and a fall tree planting working with the forestry department. And we have a couple of other for-profit entities to help with that as well. And we have over 200 volunteers that come out and help on a really early Saturday morning and help get those trees in the ground. And I've had some really special stories come out of those tree plantings when people are like, well, why can't the forestry department just do it? Kids that have come and you could tell they didn't really want to be there. And by the end of it, they were all like, I'm going to come to the next one. And I'm going to know that this tree, when I pass it in 10 years, I'm going to know I planted it. So we really try to do those kind of empowering, making connections between people and making them feel like they make a difference.
Right, and it connects people to their neighborhood so they have that pride that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So besides the tree planting, what other kinds of projects or ideas, and I know you meet as a group as well, so maybe you could talk a little bit about how many RNeighbors neighborhoods you have.
Right now we're at 29, and it's free to register. It's a lot of people confuse neighborhood associations with homeowners associations, and we're not the neighborhood police. We are all about helping people organize so they can have picnics or potlucks or garage sales. It's not about measuring people's grass or getting them in trouble for the color of the paint on their house.
Although I will say RNeighbors helps put together a really helpful ordinance book that does, you have one with you, that does help people understand what some of the city ordinances are, and not in a punitive way, in a helpful, proactive way.
Right. I'm glad you brought the ordinance book up because this was one of our first projects. I was not on board yet, and it was out of the police department when RNeighbors first started, and they started to keep a tab of all the most common things people would call about with questions. Oh. And so, as you know, the city ordinance book is like this big, thick, and so this is a boiled down version. So if people want to know what the curfew is in the park or what to do if they have a blocked up drain or something like that, they can check out the ordinance book.
Yeah, so we've talked about a couple of the projects. I know you've done many more that we don't have time to touch on today, but how can people find out a little bit more about RNeighbors? Do you have a website?
Yes, we have a website,
Okay.
and this summer we'll be going live with the new website, which we've been working on for over a year, so I'm really excited about that. And as part of the website, we have a new edition called the Neighborhood Toolkit, and that will be different case studies from local neighborhoods, as well as a handbook of how to make connections in your neighborhood. And also, if you want to register your neighborhood association, we'll give the benefits, and there's a registration form right online. And like I said, it's free to register, and it gets you a spot on our map and gets you access to lots of resources.
Terrific. Well, thank you for joining us
Thank
today
you.
and telling us a little bit about RNeighbors. We appreciate all that you do for our community, and we hope to see the rest of you next time.